The billionaire's mistress humiliates his pregnant wife, but karma strikes back instantly. Welcome to Mr. Carter Stories. Love, betrayal, revenge, redemption. Get ready for heart-pounding drama, intense emotions, and twists you never see coming. Will love conquer betrayal, or will karma strike first? Dive into powerful billionaire romances where secrets unravel, hearts break, and second chances change everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss an unforgettable story. The grandeur of the Kingston Gala was nothing short of breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light, the soft hum of classical music intertwined with laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. The elite of high society moved gracefully, their designer gowns and tailored suits reflecting their status. It was a night of celebration, a showcase of power and prestige. But for Sophia Kingston, the night was anything but celebratory. Dressed in an elegant yet modest satin maternity gown, she stepped into the room, her hand instinctively resting on her growing belly. She had once attended these events with confidence, standing proudly beside her husband, Adrian Kingston, the billionaire CEO whose name commanded both fear and respect. But tonight, something felt off. The moment she entered, the whispers started. Women exchanged knowing glances, men quickly averted their gazes, and the once welcoming smiles turned into something else entirely. Pity. Sophia's stomach clenched. Something was wrong, and then she saw why. At the heart of the ballroom, surrounded by the elite, stood Vanessa Moore, the woman the tabloids had been obsessively linking to her husband for months. The scandalous headlines replayed in Sophia's mind. Billionaire Adrian Kingston spotted with mystery woman. Who is she? Marriage in trouble? Vanessa Moore, seen leaving Kingston Enterprises late at night. The billionaire's mistress. Is Adrian Kingston's wife on her way out? Sophia had ignored them all. She had told herself they were lies, that Adrian would never betray her, not while she carried his child. But the sight before her was undeniable. Vanessa wasn't just standing next to Adrian. She was practically draped over him, her manicured fingers tracing lazy circles on his arm as she leaned in close, whispering something in his ear. And worst of all, Adrian chuckled, not a nervous chuckle, not the polite, distant kind, a real amused laugh, the kind that used to belong to her. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The betrayal stung sharper than any knife. As if sensing her presence, Vanessa turned. Her glossy red lips curled into a slow, satisfied smirk as her gaze traveled over Sophia's figure, pausing deliberately at her swollen belly. "Oh, Sophia!" Vanessa gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. "I didn't see you there." "Liar. You should have told me you were coming. I would have given you fashion advice." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but the venom underneath was unmistakable. Her eyes flickered over Sophia's simple yet elegant maternity dress, a look of mock concern crossing her features. Before Sophia could react, the snide giggles of nearby guests cut through the air. It was subtle, just a few women exchanging hushed whispers behind their champagne glasses. But Sophia heard it all. She looks exhausted. No wonder with everything going on. Poor thing. Does she not realize? Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. She wasn't naive. She knew how society worked, how women like Vanessa thrived on the humiliation of others. But to be disrespected this publicly? To be mocked so boldly while her husband stood there, silent? Sophia turned to Adrian. He wasn't looking at her. He wasn't even acknowledging her. Instead, his eyes remained on Vanessa, his expression unreadable. Sophia felt the first crack in her heart. Vanessa tilted her head, her smile growing. "Pregnancy suits you," she continued, her gaze flickering to Sophia's belly. "I mean in a comfortable sort of way." The jab landed, and the laughter that followed was louder this time. Sophia lifted her chin. If Vanessa expected her to crumble, she would be disappointed. With a calm she didn't feel, Sophia forced a smile. "Oh, Vanessa," she said, voice smooth as silk. "You should have told me you were coming. I would have given you dignity advice." The laughter died instantly. Vanessa's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. But before she could retaliate, a server approached, balancing a tray of champagne. Vanessa's hand shot out, plucking a glass before turning to Adrian. "To new beginnings," she purred, raising the glass toward him. Sophia stilled. New beginnings? Her heart pounded as Adrian hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before accepting the glass. That hesitation was all she needed to see. Sophia had always imagined betrayal would feel like a storm. Loud, destructive, impossible to ignore. But standing there watching her husband entertain another woman's presence, she realized the worst kind of betrayal was the quiet kind. The kind that slipped in like a shadow unnoticed until it had already consumed everything. A lump formed in her throat, but she refused to let it show. With one last glance at the man she had once trusted with her entire soul, Sophia turned and walked away. She didn't need to hear the whispers to know what they were saying. She had just lost her place beside him. But they had no idea. Adrian Kingston was about to lose something far greater. The tension in the grand ballroom thickened like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting golden light over the guests. But the warmth didn't reach Sophia Kingston. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she took a step forward, her only goal to escape. But before she could take another, a manicured hand slid into her path. Vanessa Moore. The younger woman stood there, poised in a breathtaking crimson gown, her glossy lips curled into a smirk that sent a chill down Sophia's spine. Vanessa's voice was soft, almost sweet, but the venom underneath was unmistakable. "Oh, Sophia," she purred, "are you sure you should be here in your condition?" Her gaze flickered to Sophia's rounded belly, feigned concern dancing in her eyes. "I heard stress isn't good for the baby." A murmur swept through the guests. A few exchanged knowing glances. Their curiosity piqued. Sophia froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she kept her face carefully blank. This wasn't just a casual jab. This was calculated. Vanessa wanted to humiliate her, to paint her as weak, as unworthy. Sophia inhaled slowly, steadying herself. She would not give Vanessa the satisfaction of breaking. She took a step to the side, determined to walk away, but Vanessa mirrored her movement effortlessly, blocking her path once more. "Really, darling," Vanessa continued with an exaggerated pout, "these events can be so exhausting. Are you sure it's safe for you to be here? I mean, all this tension?" The words dripped with condescension, and Sophia knew what she was doing. She wasn't just attacking her as a wife, she was attacking her as a mother. The watching crowd leaned in, hungry for her reaction. Sophia lifted her chin, her voice cold and steady. "I appreciate your concern, Vanessa, but I think I can decide what's best for me." The smirk on Vanessa's lips widened. "Of course you can." She let out a light, mocking laugh. "It's just, if something were to happen, imagine how embarrassing that would be." Sophia stiffened. "She's baiting you." She could feel the weight of their gazes pressing down on her like chains, waiting, expecting her to crumble. But instead of engaging, she turned to Adrian. "Please." The word burned in her throat, but she didn't say it aloud. She didn't have to. Adrian Kingston, the man who had once held her hand at events like this, the man who had once whispered in her ear to ignore the vultures of high society, stood there watching and did nothing. The lump in Sophia's throat grew as he sighed, rubbing his temple in irritation. "Vanessa," he muttered, "don't start." That was it. No anger, no defense, no sharp words to put Vanessa in her place. He might as well have been telling a spoiled child to behave. Sophia's breath caught. Her stomach twisted painfully, but she refused to react. Vanessa, however, feigned surprise. "Oh, but I am concerned, Adrian," she said smoothly, tilting her head. "You wouldn't want her to faint and embarrass you, would you?" The crowd tittered with hushed whispers. Sophia went still. Something inside her cracked, a deep, raw pain lancing through her chest. He doesn't care. Adrian still hadn't looked at her. Not once. The realization was like ice in her veins. She had endured months of rumors, ignored the whispers, convinced herself that the media had twisted things out of proportion. She had told herself that even if Adrian was distant, even if he was spending late nights at work, it was temporary. That once the baby was born, things would go back to the way they were. But she had been wrong. Pain clawed up her throat, and tears burned behind her eyes. But she would not let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. Summoning every ounce of dignity she had left, Sophia straightened her shoulders, ignoring the tremble in her limbs. Without a word, she turned on her heel and walked away. The whispers followed her, but she kept her head high. Adrian never called after her, and that, more than anything, told her what she needed to know. She had lost him. Or maybe he had lost her. The ride back to the Kingston mansion was silent. Sophia sat in the back seat of the luxury car, her hands resting protectively over her swollen belly. The city lights blurred past the window, but she barely saw them. Her mind replayed the gala, Vanessa's smirk, the laughter, Adrian's indifference. Each memory was a dagger, cutting deeper than the last. By the time the driver pulled up to the grand estate, Sophia felt hollow. She stepped out, her heels clicking against the cobblestone driveway. The mansion loomed before her, a masterpiece of architecture, marble pillars, sprawling glass windows, a symbol of power and wealth. But to her, it was nothing more than an empty house. She let herself inside, the air unnervingly still. Once, this place had felt like a home. Now it was suffocating. Her feet carried her upstairs to the nursery. The walls were painted a soft blue, delicate white furniture arranged with care. Plush toys sat neatly on shelves, waiting for a child that hadn't yet arrived. A rocking chair sat by the window, where she had once imagined sitting, cradling her baby, whispering lullabies into the night. But now, Sophia's chest ached. She would not raise her child in a house filled with silence, in a marriage void of love and respect. Adrian had made his choice, and now she was making hers. Hours later, the clock struck midnight. Adrian Kingston finally walked through the front doors. Sophia was still awake. She sat on the edge of their bed, her hands folded in her lap, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. He loosened his tie, barely sparing her a glance. "You left early," he muttered as if she had simply stepped out for fresh air. "Why?" Sophia swallowed back the lump in her throat. Adrian hadn't asked if she was okay. He hadn't come home earlier to check on her. He hadn't cared. He was only here now because she had left in a way that had inconvenienced him. "I had no reason to stay," she said, her voice steady. Adrian exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. "Sophia, you can't just—" "I'm leaving, Adrian." The words were quiet, but they crashed between them like a thunderclap. For the first time, he looked at her. His head snapped up, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What?" Sophia met his gaze, forcing herself to stay strong. "I deserve better," she whispered. "And so does our child." Adrian blinked as if trying to process what she had just said. "Stop being dramatic," he scoffed. "You're not going anywhere." Sophia let out a soft, bitter laugh. "That's the problem, Adrian. You think I'll stay no matter what you do, no matter how many times you hurt me." His jaw tightened. "I haven't hurt you." Sophia felt something inside her snap. "Then why do I feel like I'm breaking every time I look at you?" Her voice cracked, but she held her ground. "You let that woman humiliate me. You let everyone humiliate me. And you just stood there." Adrian's expression flickered, something between guilt and frustration, but he didn't deny it. She shook her head. "I won't live like this. And I won't raise my child in a home where his father looks at his mother like she's nothing." Silence. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed Adrian's face. But it was too late. Sophia turned, walking toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Adrian demanded, his voice sharper now. She didn't stop. "To pack." Adrian took a step forward as if to stop her, but he hesitated, because deep down he knew. She was really leaving, and for the first time, Adrian Kingston was losing. Adrian Kingston woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating endlessly on the nightstand. Groggy and irritated, he reached for it, squinting against the bright screen. 36 missed calls, dozens of messages, headlines flooding every news outlet. His heart pounded as he scrolled through the notifications. "Billionaire's wife leaves mansion in the dead of night. Is Vanessa the reason? Pregnant Sophia Kingston walks out. Adrian's mistress to blame? Kingston scandal. Investors concerned as public turns against CEO. Adrian sat up abruptly. What the hell was this? His mind snapped back to last night, the way Sophia had looked at him, the way she had walked away. He had thought she was bluffing, but she wasn't here. The bed beside him was untouched, and now the world knew. A tight knot formed in his chest. This wasn't just a personal matter anymore. This was a public disaster. His phone buzzed again. Call from James Carter, board member. Adrian exhaled sharply and answered. What? What the hell is going on, Adrian? James's voice was sharp with barely contained frustration. The media is tearing you apart. Stockholders are already calling emergency meetings. Clients are worried. This isn't just a tabloid scandal anymore. It's affecting business. Adrian rubbed his temple, tension knotting in his jaw. It's being handled, he lied. James scoffed. It better be, because if this mess isn't cleaned up soon, you won't just be losing a wife, you'll be losing everything. The call ended. Adrian tossed the phone onto the bed, running a hand through his hair. The house was too quiet, a sharp contrast to the chaos outside. He stood, grabbed a shirt from the chair, and stalked downstairs. And there she was, Vanessa Moore, sitting comfortably at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee from one of Sophia's cups. She was scrolling through her phone, a satisfied smirk tugging at her lips. When she noticed him, she raised an eyebrow. Good morning, lover. Adrian ignored the sick feeling in his stomach. Did you see the news? Vanessa let out a light laugh. Oh, everyone has seen the news. She took another sip of coffee, completely unfazed. She left Adrian. She finally got the hint. His jaw clenched. Vanessa tilted her head, studying him. Honestly, let her go. She was boring anyway. Something inside him snapped. For the first time, her words didn't amuse him. They disgusted him. He stared at Vanessa, the woman who had inserted herself into his life, the woman he had foolishly entertained while his wife suffered, the same woman who had mocked Sophia in front of an entire crowd, the same woman who was now sipping coffee like nothing had happened. Sophia was gone, and it was his fault. A cold realization settled over him. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time, and Adrian Kingston was finally seeing it. Days turned into weeks. Adrian Kingston remained the face of Kingston Enterprises, attending meetings, shaking hands, and delivering press statements to reassure investors. But inside he was unraveling. The house felt empty. The silence was deafening. Sophia's absence was like a ghost haunting every corner, her soft laughter no longer echoing in the halls, her gentle presence missing from the dining table. The mansion, once full of life, felt like nothing more than an expensive, hollow cage. At first, Adrian had convinced himself he was fine, that she'd come back, that this was just one of her dramatic outbursts. But days passed, then weeks, and Sophia never came back. One evening, Adrian found himself in the study, nursing a glass of whiskey, his fingers absent-mindedly flipping through old documents. That's when he saw it, an old leather-bound photo album tucked beneath a pile of forgotten papers. Something in his chest tightened as he reached for it, the edges worn from years of handling. He opened it, and there she was, Sophia, smiling up at him from the pages. There was a photo of their wedding day, her eyes shimmering with love as she held his hands. A picture from their honeymoon, her arms wrapped around his neck, laughing as he tried to carry her across the sand. Countless moments frozen in time, each one a reminder of what they had been, before the coldness, before the distance, before Vanessa. Adrian's grip tightened around the album, a sharp pang of regret piercing through his chest. When had he stopped looking at her like that? When had he let everything fall apart? A soft voice broke his thoughts. Still thinking about her? Adrian stiffened. Vanessa stood behind him, draped in one of his expensive robes, her fingers trailing over his shoulder. He didn't answer. She leaned in closer, her lips grazing his ear. She left, Adrian. She's gone. No use clinging to the past. He closed the album and set it aside. Then for the first time, he shrugged her off. Vanessa blinked, surprised. What's wrong? Adrian exhaled, running a hand over his face. His voice was quiet but firm. I need to find Sophia. The room fell into silence. Vanessa's playful smirk faltered. Her fingers curled against her robe as a sharp edge crept into her voice. Why? Adrian met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Because I lost something irreplaceable. And for the first time in a long time, Adrian Kingston felt something he hadn't felt before. Panic. Vanessa Moore had always craved the spotlight. With Sophia gone, she basked in the attention, attending high-profile events, draped in designer gowns, flashing her signature smirk at the cameras. She was no longer just Adrian Kingston's mistress. She was the woman who won. At least that's what she thought. Until karma came knocking. The leak that changed everything. It started with a single video, a blurry, grainy clip surfaced online, recorded at a private party weeks ago. Vanessa, dressed in a shimmering gold gown, lounged on a velvet couch, a cocktail in one hand, her laughter high and reckless. And then she spoke, loud, careless, drunk. Adrian, please, she rolled her eyes. He's just my ticket to luxury. Once his wife's out of the way, I'll own everything. Laughter erupted around her. Men like him are so easy to control. She smirked, swirling her drink. Sophia was weak. That's why she lost. The video exploded across social media like wildfire. Gold digger exposed. Vanessa Moore's true intentions caught on camera. Billionaire's mistress laughs about using him. Will Adrian finally see the truth? Sophia Kingston was right all along. The backlash was instant. Fans turned against her. Socialites who once welcomed her now whispered behind her back. The business world watched in disgust. Investors, already wary of Adrian's scandal, saw the video and pulled out of Kingston Enterprises. The company's stocks plummeted overnight. The empire Adrian had built, his legacy, was now crumbling. Because of her. Vanessa's panic. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Vanessa grabbed it, expecting a call from Adrian, maybe even his lawyers. But instead, it was her publicist. Fix this, Vanessa snapped the moment she answered. Tell them it's fake, that it was edited. The woman on the other end sighed. Vanessa, it's over. No one's buying it. Vanessa's breath hitched. No, I can turn this around. Adrian will. He won't. Those two words sent ice down her spine. The call ended. Vanessa swallowed hard and tried Adrian's number. Voicemail. She tried again. And again. Still nothing. He wasn't answering. A cold, unfamiliar feeling crept into her chest. Panic. Her plan was falling apart. And for the first time, Vanessa Moore realized she was about to lose everything. Adrian Kingston had searched for Sophia relentlessly. She had vanished without a trace, leaving nothing behind but a scandal that had shattered his world. His private investigators had come up empty, her accounts were wiped clean, and every lead led to a dead end. Until now. After weeks of searching, he finally had an address. A quiet coastal town, a small cottage tucked away near the cliffs. It wasn't what he had expected. Sophia had been used to luxury, their glass-walled mansion, designer furniture, and a staff that catered to her every need. But here there were no gates, no security, no extravagance. Just a modest home surrounded by wildflowers, the sound of waves crashing in the distance. His heart pounded as he stepped onto the porch. He hesitated for only a moment before knocking. The door opens. The moment Sophia appeared in the doorway, Adrian nearly dropped to his knees. She looked different. Her belly was rounder, her pregnancy further along. Her golden brown hair was pulled into a loose bun, wisps framing her face. But it was her eyes that made his breath catch. They were colder, guarded, not the warm, loving eyes he once knew. For the first time, he truly felt the weight of what he had done. What are you doing here, Adrian? She asked flatly. No warmth, no relief, nothing. He swallowed hard. I was a fool, Sophia. I let Vanessa ruin us. She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. It wasn't just her. His chest tightened. You let it happen, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Adrian nodded. I know. Silence stretched between them, a gulf of pain and betrayal that felt impossible to cross. He wanted to tell her everything, how the house felt empty without her, how nothing tasted the same, how he couldn't sleep knowing she was out there alone. But none of that mattered. What mattered was this moment. "I'm here to make things right," he said, his voice raw with emotion. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "You can't undo the past, Adrian." She moved to shut the door. Panic surged through him. But before she could close him out completely, he spoke the words that made her freeze. "Then let me prove I can change the future." Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Hesitation. Adrian held his breath, waiting, hoping. Because if he lost her now, he knew he would never get her back. Adrian Kingston had never known patience. His life had been built on instant success, money, power, and control. If he wanted something, he got it. But Sophia was different. She wasn't something to be won back with apologies and expensive gifts. She was someone who had been broken by him, and if he had any chance of fixing what he destroyed, he would have to prove himself, with actions, not words. Staying in town, Adrian didn't leave. He rented a small house in town. Nothing extravagant, nothing flashy. Just a simple place where he could be close to Sophia without invading her space. But he didn't force his way back into her life. Instead, he waited. And while he waited, he worked. A different Adrian. Sophia volunteered at the local clinic, helping expectant mothers who didn't have the privileges she once did. So Adrian went there too. Not as a billionaire, not as the CEO of Kingston Enterprises, but as a man who wanted to be better. At first, the townspeople were wary. "Why's a billionaire getting his hands dirty?" they whispered. "Guilt," some guessed. "Love," others murmured. But slowly, Adrian proved himself. He carried supplies. He fixed broken chairs. He helped elderly patients to their cars. He drove Sophia to her doctor's appointments without being asked, and he never once expected anything in return. The night he breaks, one evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Adrian and Sophia found themselves on the beach. She sat on a rock, the wind playing with her hair, the glow of sunset reflecting in her tired but beautiful eyes. Adrian sat beside her, close, but not too close. For a long time they didn't speak. Then he broke. His voice was quiet, almost fragile. "I don't deserve you." Sophia turned her head slightly, surprised at the rawness in his tone. Adrian's gaze was on the ocean, his hands clenched in his lap. "But I love you," he whispered, "and I love our child. I'll spend my life making it up to you if you let me." Sophia's throat tightened. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. She had spent months believing he didn't care, that she and their child had meant nothing to him. But now he looked like a man who had lost everything. She swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but Adrian heard every word. Slowly he reached out, but he didn't touch her. He let his hand hover between them, close enough for warmth, but not enough to force her. "Then I'll wait," he said, voice steady, "until you can." Sophia stared at him, really stared at him. For the first time in a long time, she didn't see the man who broke her. She saw the man she once loved, and that terrified her. Vanessa Moore had lost everything. Her social circle had abandoned her. Her once loyal followers now mocked her online. Kingston Enterprises had severed all ties, and Adrian, he wouldn't even take her calls. For the first time in her life, Vanessa was truly alone, and she couldn't stand it. A desperate plan, sitting in a dingy hotel room, far from the lavish penthouses she once called home, Vanessa scrolled through the latest headlines on her phone. Kingston billionaire redeems himself, spotted with pregnant wife in coastal town. Sophia Kingston, the woman who survived betrayal. Vanessa Moore, from mistress to nobody. Her nails dug into her palm. Number, this isn't how it ends. If the world had turned against her, she would drag Sophia down with her, and she knew exactly how. The scandal that never was. The next morning, news outlets exploded with new headlines. A supposed affair scandal involving Sophia. Vanessa had leaked fake emails and messages to the press. carefully edited to make it look like Sophia had been secretly involved with another man while still married to Adrian. Sophia Kingston's affair. Was she unfaithful first? Is Adrian Kingston being played again? The billionaire's wife? Innocent or master manipulator? It should have worked. It should have turned the public against Sophia. But this time the world didn't fall for it. The truth comes out. Adrian saw the headlines the moment they dropped. For a brief second, his old instincts flared. Doubt, suspicion, anger. But then he stopped himself. He knew Sophia, and more importantly, he knew Vanessa. Instead of staying silent, Adrian went on the offensive. He called a press conference standing before dozens of reporters, his expression cold and unwavering. "I'm here to address the baseless rumors circulating about my wife, Sophia Kingston," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. He pulled out physical evidence, proof that Vanessa had fabricated the entire scandal. "Vanessa Moore has been trying to manipulate the media for months, but let me make this clear. Sophia is the only woman I have ever loved. And these rumors, they end today." The reporters erupted with questions, but Adrian wasn't finished. "There was never an affair," he said, his voice sharper now. "The only betrayal was mine, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for it." Then with a final damning blow, he exposed Vanessa completely. He revealed her gold-digging confessions, the leaked video, the manipulation, all of it. By the time the press conference ended, Vanessa Moore's reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Karma strikes. The backlash was swift and brutal. Media outlets retracted her fake claims. Social media turned against her. Any last shreds of sympathy she had were gone. Vanessa tried to fight back, but no one would listen. Her name became synonymous with deception and disgrace. She had lost her power, her wealth, and her influence. And in the end, she had nothing left. The moment Sophia felt the first sharp contraction, she knew. It was time. Pain shot through her, and she gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "Adrian!" Her voice wavered, panic creeping in. Within seconds, Adrian was at her side, his face pale but determined. "I've got you," he said, already pulling out his phone to call the doctor. Sophia's eyes squeezed shut as another contraction tore through her. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But their baby was, and there was no stopping it now. The longest night. The hospital room was a blur of bright lights, urgent voices, and pain. Sophia clutched Adrian's hand as another wave of agony hit her. "You're doing amazing," Adrian whispered, brushing damp hair from her forehead. His grip was firm, unshakable. Tears burned in Sophia's eyes. He had never been here for her before. Not when she cried herself to sleep in an empty mansion. Not when Vanessa flaunted their affair like a trophy. But now he wasn't leaving. A deep, shuddering breath escaped her. "Please don't break me again." A father's first tear. Minutes stretched into hours. And then, a baby's cry filled the room. A raw, beautiful sound that shattered Adrian Kingston into pieces. His breath hitched, his chest rising and falling with ragged emotion. The doctor swaddled the tiny, pink-cheeked infant and carefully placed her in Adrian's trembling hands. And in that moment, he broke. Tears slipped down his face as he stared at the small life they had created. "She's perfect," he whispered, voice shaking. Sophia, exhausted but watching him closely, felt her heart tighten. Not long ago, she had believed he was incapable of love. But this was real. Love finds a way. Adrian turned to her, his eyes red, his expression utterly raw. "I will never hurt you again," he vowed. "Never." Sophia studied him, searching for even the smallest hint of a lie. But there was none. Only truth. Only love. Her fingers brushed over his as he held their daughter, and for the first time in a long time, she let hope in. Maybe, just maybe, they could start again. The past was full of pain, but love had the power to rewrite the future.